Here I will be talking about the synthesis of fatty acids, and just in case you're curious if there's a special name for this pathway, there's none. So this is just called fatty acid synthesis in most textbooks. So first thing you should know is that this process starts in the cytosol, and in fact until the time that it becomes a legitimate fatty acid, the process will stay in the cytosol. Here, our starting molecule is acetyl-CoA, and I think one of the first things you should know is that the synthesis of fatty acids has many control points or ways of being regulated by the human body. And although it is impossible to discuss all those possible methods, most introductory texts would mention something about insulin or something about the feeding state of the person. Usually, we synthesize our fatty acids more when we are in the fed state, especially if there is a rise in our blood sugar. And although the scope of this way of regulating is beyond what I want to record right now, it's as if blood sugar rise would contribute to additional creation of our fats. So, that is when our body would decide to use acetyl-CoA for synthesis of fatty acids. I need to emphasize on that because if you've watched my previous discussions, acetyl-CoA could actually be used in the Krebs cycle, which is a different thing altogether. But here, once our body decides to utilize acetyl-CoA for fatty acid synthesis, this will not be transferred to the mitochondrion for the Krebs. So, here, we first remember that acetyl-CoA has two carbons, and the rate-limiting step in fatty acid synthesis is the conversion of acetyl-CoA to malonyl-CoA via carboxylation. So as you can see, the name of the enzyme here is carboxylase. That means that we're going to add a molecule of carbon dioxide, and thus, with that one carbon, the two carbons from acetyl-CoA now become 3. So take note that malonyl-CoA is a 3-carbon compound which we could actually consider as the building block. That is, in order to create our fatty acids, we just need to continuously and repeatedly add malonyl molecules. However, just to be more accurate, it is not actually CoA, which would be the partner molecule of this malonyl group, but instead something called ACP. This stands for acyl carrier protein, which would make a whole lot of sense because the job of this protein is to carry the acyl group or the fatty acid group. So ACP comes in, CoA goes out. So what we have right now is malonyl group attached to that ACP. Whenever you see ACP, it's really likely that the pathway you're looking at is fatty acid synthesis and none other, no other else. So I did mention that we will just keep adding and adding malonyl groups, but if we're gonna start from scratch, we're gonna need another molecule of acetyl-CoA, so note that this is written in white text, just to emphasize that this is not the same as the yellow one a while ago. And just like a while ago, we need to get rid of the CoA and substitute it with ACP to fully commit it to fatty acid synthesis. Otherwise, this acetyl-CoA would go elsewhere. There are other pathways that could welcome it anyway. Now, since we have at this point an acetyl ACP group, which contains two carbons, of course, we will add the two carbons of this acetyl group and the three carbons of this acetyl group via condensation. Do note that I already skipped or dropped the name of the specific enzymes for fatty acid synthesis, although you should know that they have their own names. I just don't want to mention them right now. And in this condensation process, there's actually a subsequent decarboxylation step. That means if I have 2 plus 3, that's 5 carbons, but there's the removal of 1 carbon from carbon dioxide, the overall math would be 3 plus 2 minus 1. So that means at this point, we have only 4 carbons left. Just to give you an idea of what the molecule looks like, this malonyl group would actually be represented by 2 carbons, and then you can just imagine that from this acetyl group, we would have 2 carbons also, wherein this carbon is attached to ACP. It's not really the best way of representing the molecule, but this would do for the purpose I intend to cover in this recording. Now, this is called a beta ketoacyl ACP because if we consider this carbonyl group as the original COOH, so this is like the real functional group, the carbon next to that is the alpha, and then after that is the beta. And as you can clearly see, there is a keto or a carbonyl group at the beta carbon, beta ketoacyl. The next step is reduction, so that means there is the reduction of this keto group. So remember, if a double bond O is reduced, that means it becomes a hydroxyl group, right? So the C double bond O now becomes a CHOH, and then that's the only thing that changes. The white one, let's just think that there's nothing that's changed here. So what we have right now is a beta hydroxyacyl because I did mention that the keto group would be reduced into a hydroxy group or an OH group. Next, we have dehydration. So, of course, dehydration means the removal of water. And you might remember this from your organic chemistry that if I do dehydrate an alcohol, that means I'm going to get rid of this OH, and then from one of the carbons beside it, this is the more stable one, okay, as per the Zaitsev's rule, we will get rid of one of the H's here, so OH plus one of those H is H2O. In exchange for the removal of this OH and one of those hydrogens, there must be a double bond here. So now our uh, final molecule at the moment is CH3, CH. This was the OH portion a while ago. It's gone now. We're going to replace that with a double bond, and then the CH is going to be just like that. And at this moment, we have an enoyl wait, I think this is supposed to be only enoyl ACP because in, since we have an alkene, and then oil is like just the suffix for the original acyl group. So enoyl ACP. Next, we have reduction, and if you remember, the only way that we could reduce a double bond is to add more hydrogens. So in organic chemistry, we call this hydrogenation, such that the double bond becomes a single bond. And thus, the product would look something like this. 2, and then CH2 again. And then this would be it. So the double bond is now gone, and it's just as if we have a alkyl group, right? And now, what do we have at the moment? As you can see, we have CH3, CH2, CH2, C double bond O, and if we remove this ACP, that's OH. So technically, this is now just a simple fatty acid or carboxylic acid. It's just that if you compare it to the original, if you assume or imagine acetyl as the original acyl group, acetyl group has 2 carbons, right? How many carbons do we now have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it might be an acyl group just like the original thing up above, but the only difference is that it now has 2 carbons more. Thus, it just means that after going through these 4 steps, all we did was to just add 2 carbons from the original stuff. So, the mathematics is simple because if you could just imagine that this thing could, once I add the next malonyl, this would keep on repeating and repeating, we will just add another 2 carbons so that from 4 carbons it will now become 6. And then do it one more time, it becomes 8. So, that is rather simple, and that's why, as you can see here, this is the simplified version of what I'm showing you in detail here, that if I start from 2 carbons, that is our white acetyl group here, after 4 steps, we now have 4 carbons. Repeat those 4 steps, we now have 6. Then 8, 10, 12, 14. And usually, of course, that is also regulated as to what the limits are. Animals and humans normally stop at 16 carbons. Now, once we arrive at 16 carbons, which means we have palmitic acid attached to ACP, of course. Remember, this ACP has never been removed so far. We have at the moment something called palmitoyl ACP. And the last step in fatty acid synthesis is usually to liberate or remove ACP from the palmitoyl group. So if I remove that ACP, I will now arrive at palmitate, or simply palmitic acid. And because this time, since our palmitate right here is not attached to anything, not attached to CoA, nor ACP, this is what we can now call a free fatty acid. Thus, if I have something with ACP or CoA in it, I cannot actually call it free. So far, what I have discussed is the synthesis of a free fatty acid in the cytosol of a cell. And indeed, this is very important because as we know, a lot of important physiologic lipids, saponifiable lipids, are um, made up or comprised of fatty acids. You may stop watching this if this is all you need, but for those who want to go further and know the general steps of how we could use these fatty acids for the synthesis of other physiologic lipids like tags or phospholipids, then proceed. The thing is, the synthesis of phospholipids or triglycerides is not anymore done in the cytosol, but in the endoplasmic reticulum, in particular the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. So imagine that this is a barrier between the cytosol and the ER, and imagine that we have a fatty acid somewhere in the cytosol. The thing is, in order to commit our fatty acid for the synthesis of either phospholipids or triglycerides, you must actually bind the fatty acid back again to CoA. So we need an acyl, CoA, to make our tags or PLs. So imagine that we have something like this, and then it enters the ER. And this thing right here, you could imagine, are the things that you will see later on. Now, once we do have those fatty acyl CoAs, we do need the help of glycerol phosphate, which in turn could originate from either glycerol or DHAP. If we start from glycerol, we could add phosphate to it using a kinase so that glycerol becomes glycerol phosphate. Alternatively, another way you could get to here is by using dihydroxyacetone phosphate, which, if you could remember, comes from glycolysis. We could just reduce that using the enzyme for DHAP. I think it's an oxidoreductase, I just forgot the exact name. And then we will still arrive at glycerol phosphate, which should look something like this. 3 carbons, and then for every carbon you have an OH. That is glycerol, but since we have glycerol phosphate, note that one of the terminal OHs contains a phosphate group. Of course, you could imagine that each hydrogen here is a possible attachment point or esterification point for a fatty acid, such that you could imagine that one OH here could bind to one fatty acyl CoA. If fatty acyl CoA binds to this, the CoA would actually be dropped. And you could just imagine this Fa replacing this hydrogen right here. And that could happen 2 times, so that the two OHs here could now be occupied by two fatty acids. Now, if you did watch my video on saponifiable lipids, you may recognize that here I have the structure of what we call phosphatidic acid, right? That's glycerol with two fatty acids and one terminal phosphate group. Now, this could be the starting point for the synthesis of other phospholipids like phosphatidylserine, phosphatidylcholine, and so on. However, there are specific steps for that which I would rather not discuss, probably in a future advanced video. But if we want to use this as a starting point for the synthesis of our triglycerides, it is actually rather simple. The first thing we need to do is to just remove or hydrolyze a phosphate group, that phosphate group right there, so that the moment that the phosphate is gone, all we have is called a diacyl glycerol. Diacyl because I have two fatty acids, and then glycerol, of course, the original backbone right here. And then finally, since we have one possible attachment point here, we could add once again a third fatty acyl CoA. Once this one esterifies that last OH, of course, the CoA will be dropped and this green fatty acid would take the place of that OH. Of course, this is now called a triglyceride because it contains 3 fatty acids and, of course, the backbone, glycerol.